In previous videos, I have spoken about the power of comics, and I firmly believe that comics are an amazingly powerful medium that do a lot for people. But in this video, what I want to do is to talk about the power of comics to transport us to a previous time. And so I'm going to be showing you comics in this video that make me feel like a kid again. Stay tuned. Reggie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. As I mentioned in that brief intro, comics are incredibly powerful. And I have heard so many stories over the years about how comics have helped people. And they've helped children learn how to read. They've helped people get through really tough times in their life in the form of like escapism. They allow people to appreciate art. And as I mentioned, anyone that doesn't see how powerful and helpful comics can be probably is someone that has never read a comic, because it's apparent. It is apparent that comics have some power. But one of the greatest things for me is that feeling of nostalgia that I get when I look at certain books. That feeling of nostalgia transports me back to a previous time. It allows me to relive aspects of my childhood in an unexpected way. I mean, literally from the cover of some books, I feel like I am back in Oak Park, Michigan, right? Back in high school. And it's incredible. It really is powerful. Some books I look at automatically take me back to a specific person that maybe I was friends with at the time, or maybe it reminds me of a relative, but it really is an amazing thing. And I'm curious whether you too have a similar experience when looking at books in your own collection. And if you do, leave those thoughts down in the comment section, because I think that this is one of those things that a lot of people can probably appreciate. So I look forward to hearing and seeing what some of your thoughts are. One of the first books that gives me this feeling is this one right here. This is Infinity Gauntlet issue number 1. And I think that this ran for 6 issues back in the day. This story was incredible to me. The cover was incredible to me. And it was an amazing read for me as a kid back in the day. And it was Infinity Quest, Infinity Gauntlet, Infinity War, all of those Infinity titles and Adam Warlock and Thanos stories that opened my mind to the cosmic landscape. And I am eternally grateful for these types of books, because I still love cosmic adventure to this day. And a lot of it started with this book right here. And I honestly don't remember if this was my original copy or not. I cannot remember, but it looks like a copy that was well loved, despite the fact that it's in Mylar. It is a copy that has been loved, but this is just a really awesome book, again, that just takes me right back to Michigan. As does this book right here, Infinity War. Just a stunning cover to this one. And I honestly don't really remember where one of these stories ends and begins, because for me, I was reading them in real time. So it's all like the same story. The whole Adam Warlock, Thanos quest, all that stuff just blends together for me. And it was just really a wonderful time in comics back in the 90s when I was reading these issues. So this next one, technically this next series of books, are also all kind of connected for me, because I started out reading one, and when I read that one, it opened my mind up to some of the others. But this is a book that when I close my eyes, I can picture the cover of this comic. I don't remember exactly what the story is all about, but I remember the cover, and I remember just the feeling that came with reading this book over and over again. And this book too is well loved. This is my original copy of Exterminators, issue number 4. And I have issue number 1, but it is issue number 4 that I think I may have purchased first, and that I think I also read the most. This cover to me just it is in my mind, right? So we have some Boom Boom, some Warlock, some Cannonball. There is just something about this one. So here is issue number 1. And this one just, I remember it, but not as much as issue number 4. I don't know why that is, but this is a book. I have found a couple of copies of it in the 100K collection. I am thinking about sending it off to CGC to get graded just because of the nostalgia that comes from this book. And I may actually read this book again, right? So this is final issue, guest starring the New Mutants. So that book, that title led me to this next one. And it is Fallen Angels. Fallen Angels. This is issue number 7 in an 8-issue limited series. And again, this is just, for some reason, this cover is stuck in my head. It's stuck in my head. I have issue number 1, which might actually be a better cover, but this one, for some reason, is not the one that I remember whenever I think about the Fallen Angels. It is cover number 7 for some reason. So again, just a really cool title that takes me right back to my childhood. And I have not read those books in a long time, but I feel like I should. I feel like I should check them out. And I wonder if the story will stand the test of time, right? Like, one of my favorite stories of all time is Marvel Comics Presents Weapon X. And I've reread that story a couple of times over the years. I still love it. I loved it as a kid, and I still love it to this day. There is something about that comic that has stood up for me over all of this time. And you just wonder whether some of the others will hold up as well. This is honestly a book I cannot remember a single thing about it. Cannot remember a single thing about it other than, of course, buying it. And I do believe that this is my original copy of this. This is Night Thrasher issue number 1. And part of the reason why I picked up Night Thrasher is because I was reading a lot of Spider-Man back in the day. Night Thrasher was a character that crossed over with Spider-Man, I think, fairly often. And I saw this on the newsstand. I picked it up. I know that I read it because I literally, if I bought something back in the day, I read it because I did not have a whole lot of money. I cannot remember what the story was about, but just a book that, again, takes me back to my childhood. I remember riding my 10-speed bike miles to a comic shop in Ferndale, Michigan, getting my comics, riding all the way back home, going into my bedroom and laying on my bed and just reading my comics, and occasionally falling asleep, waking up, and then reading the rest of the comics. But that was my routine. That was my routine. A long bike ride to and from, and then reading whatever stack of comics I happen to be able to afford. Speaking of crossover characters, this is a major crossover character from the 90s. Deathlock. And who does not love some shiny foil action? Silver foil, if you will. This is issue number 1. I did not realize that this was not his first ongoing series back in the day. Like, I didn't really realize that there was another series that had come out right before this in 1990. I believe that this one came out in 1991. One of the great things about now versus then is the internet and the ability to use different apps in the internet to figure out, like, what's true about something. You know, back in the day, this first issue collector's item, that sold me. Like, you throw that on a comic, I am sold on that book, because I did not have the ability to understand, like, what it may become before, that being the other Deathlock limited series, which, by the way, if you have not read, is incredible. It is a fantastic read. I think it's a 4-part story. Really, really solid. This one, I can't remember reading it. I know that I read it. I know for a fact that I did, but I cannot remember what's in the story, but I do remember this cover, and I do remember how dope Deathlock was back in the day when he was teaming up with Spider-Man and Punisher and whoever else he happened to team up with, because there was a lot of crossover events, a lot of crossover characters and things like that were happening back in the 90s, and Deathlock was one of those characters that crossed over. Deathlock is a cool character, no doubt about it. Does not necessarily get as much love and attention as maybe he deserves, but Deathlock is a dope character. Here's another book that, for, again, some reason or another, cannot remember what the story is about, but I remember the cover. Terror Inc. issue number 1. And this book also, to some degree, reminds me of my brother. And I don't know if he and I bought the comic at the same time or whether we traded it back and forth. But this book, whenever I see it, reminds me of my brother Raziel. And so, again, just the not so great art from this cover. Not so great art, but I remember Terror Inc. I remember that title. I remember this part of the cover, maybe not this down here, but this part of the cover. It's just amazing the impression that comics can actually make and what sticks with you decade after decade. These next 2 books are really cool books. They are really cool books, and one of them is coming into its own, I think, because of an action figure that's actually coming out. The first one is Sleepwalker. This is a book I remember being captivated by this character back in the day. I remember when this one dropped. Again, first issue collector's item. You throw that on a comic, I am all in on it. But Sleepwalker was a dope character back in the day. I did read the first couple of issues several months ago, and it's not terrible. Not great, but not terrible either. But again, as I mentioned, Sleepwalker is starting to get some attention right now. Issue number 1 is starting to heat up. And I do believe that this is actually my original copy. I think that this is my original copy from back in the day. Only a handful of spine ticks. I think that's incredibly well done for a book that was read by a teenager. So the very last book that I'll show you is, again, another comic that sticks out in my mind, that takes me back to my childhood. I know that I would actively seek this book out, and I actively read it, and I enjoyed it. This is Cloak and Dagger issue number 2. And again, it's just one of those books where it is not the first issue that stuck with me. It is this specific issue with this little character. And I can't remember what he was all about, but it was just some crazy stuff happening with these guys. But this one is also signed. I actually have a handful of books that I had signed back in the day at a con or a 2. This is actually the penciler. The penciler that signed it, Dan Lawson, I think is his last name, something like that. But again, just another book that just takes me right back to my childhood. And again, I'm honestly looking forward to reading what books do that for you, because again, comics are incredibly powerful. So with that said, I'm going to wrap this video up. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch. I hope that you leave a comment behind. I hope that you enjoyed it enough to give the video a thumbs up. And if you need to reach out to me, feel free to do so on Instagram at Regie Collects. Take care. Before I let you go, I want to give you a reminder to check out the Guide to Smart Comic Collecting. We are actually in the second print as we speak. The first print was well received and sold out, and we are getting ready to release the second print of the guide, hopefully before the end of the year. So if you have not yet placed your pre-book, please do that. Do not miss out on getting a copy of this guide. We've added a new chapter that talks about several different aspects of comic book collecting. The guide is almost 90 pages, and this thing is robust. And you can actually pick it up for $11.99 plus shipping on regiecollects.com. Don't forget to place your order. Take care.